All right, what do we got here? Channel's name here is Ben a Minute. I get what they did. And also, a preamble. They're engaged with Ben a Minutes. Ben a Minute, Ben a Minute. Still pretty good. Pretty good, pretty good. Pretty good pun. I approve. I never really engaged with their content before, but I saw this pop up on the recommended, and I instantaneously became interested. 2008, in terms of politics, certainly has had a lot of consequences. This was basically the start of the Great Recession, catalyzed due to George Bush's tax cuts that he passed, I believe, in 2005, which basically laid the groundwork, or perhaps the final nail in the coffin, that helped catalyze the subprime mortgage crisis and cause, well, the collapse of the housing market. Obviously, we all know what Obama did in response to this. Instead of bailing out the homeowners like they initially promised that they would, he bailed out the corporations, the banks, the car companies, the millionaires and the billionaires is what he ended up eventually bailing out. And homeowners significantly fucking suffered. A lot of people were evicted. They lost their fucking homes. And, well, the federal government basically did not provide any support for that. That's a radicalizing moment for a lot of people, recognizing that, well, the Democrats are completely worthless and no one has, well, my interests really at heart, broadly speaking. Perhaps like a billionaire con man who waxes poetically about all of the trade deals and pointing out the problems that do exist, but is in reality lying about them. Maybe he'll be the one who finally will help us out of this fucking economic malaise, which perfectly summarizes Trump. And I do think that focusing on 2008 is a very, very good starting point in terms of, well, where the Democrats quite literally started to, or rather the inner contradictions of the Democratic Party started to completely play out and cause the collapse into fascism that we are currently seeing to this day. We all remember, right? Under Obama's stewardship, the Democrats lost over 1,000 state seats all across the fucking country. That's a record in terms of huge losses for a party, I think, in the history of the U.S. That all happened under Obama because of just him promising hope and change, and, well, nothing came of it. But let's start the video.
The year is 2025. Income inequality is at an all-time high. The planet is heating up at an alarming rate. Fascism is on Western civilization's doorstep. And for the past couple of months, I've woken up every single day with one question on my mind. How the f*** did we get here? And before you ask, no, this isn't one of those videos recapping The Big Short and explaining what a subprime mortgage is. Everyone's heard that story, and I want to tell a new one. One you may not have heard until now. Hey, it's been a minute. And today, we're going to try to find the exact moment in time that led us to right now. I hope everyone brought their flux capacitors because we're going back in time to Rock War is going better. Many Iraqis still smolder.
Voters have chosen our first African-American president.
iPhone 3G.
Obama.
Oh man, 2008 feels so nice. I can go bowling on Wii Sports. Hey look, YouTube's not polluted with cancerous alt-right content and AI Jesus. We're going to Candy Mountain. We even elected a president who has
Oh, dude. This was, like, crazy just thinking about this. Seeing all this fucking, like... This is, like, some complete fucking flash to the back fucking goddamn shit, dude. It's fucking crazy. What was I doing in 2008? I would have been in fucking school, right? I think it was in elementary school still. No, I would have been in junior high, right? Like grade 7? Grade 8? 12? Yeah, like grade 8.
above a 5th grade reading level.
Am I supposed to read it right now? Yeah, please read it. Well, perhaps you'd like to say what that very important paragraph...
Yeah, so...
If you're like me, you kind of missed 2008. Making my way through adolescence in 2008 actually felt pretty prosperous. I think a lot of people around my age feel that way. We remember it as a time before the rise of smartphones, when the world just felt a little smaller, a little simpler, and a little safer. But I also think that our parents remember 2008 a bit differently. Because while we were kids, locked away in our bedrooms, blasting the Black Eyed Peas, they were the grown-ups, saddled with adulthood responsibilities like childcare, bills, taxes, and, oh yeah, mortgages. And if you had a mortgage in 2008, there's really only one thing that you associate with.
Yahoo down 8.5%, the most serious recession in decades. It was the worst day on Wall Street since
Hello,
1987.
The effects of the
subprime
oil crisis
mortgage
were
crisis.
devastating. Tidal waves of home foreclosures, people's lifetime retirements up in smoke. 1 in 10 Americans left unemployed. Our parents' generation was...
Guys, maybe the Reaganite experiment of deciding to put 401ks in the hands of the stock market might have been a bad thing. We probably speaking, we know the root causes for as to why, like, the subprime mortgage crisis really happened and why a lot of people's retirements ended up going in smoke. Like, we know. Thank you, Ronald Reagan and George Bush, for all of that. Very, very cool.
traumatized. And rightly so. The American dream had been sold to them over the course of a lifetime. Yet, for so many, it had evaporated in a matter of months.
Just a little tired of the American dream.
But in this video, I want to make the argument that it wasn't just the financial crisis itself that led to political chaos, corporate capture, and general idiocracy that plagues our nation in 2025. You see, '08 was no accident. People saw this coming. Take a look at this Money Week cover article from 2006. The danger of derivatives. The exact issue that caused the '08 crisis. You're telling me journalists at a mid-sized financial magazine had more insider info than the top executives at Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and Lehman? And yet, no bank executives ever went to prison. Most of these banks are still around today, reaping in record profits. Our government's response to the crisis, specifically its callous refusal to hold the wealthy and powerful accountable, led to a profound distrust in American politics and government. And that distrust manifested in the fresh hell that is waking up every new day of 2025. But you know what? We're getting ahead of ourselves. To really understand the '08 collapse, we need to hop back.
Yeah, this is also, broadly speaking, the thing that I was describing earlier in the preamble. Again, why do people have, broadly speaking, huge distrust of the American political system? Who did Obama primarily bail out from the subprime mortgage crisis? The banks, the big companies, and, well, the rich, broadly speaking. He gave money to the banks to help shore up the banks, and as well as the car companies. That's who was bailed out primarily. These motherfuckers. Homeowners got fucking nothing. They got foreclosed on. Their lives instantaneously gone. We all know the meme right now of how it's like impossible for like an average millennial to be able to buy a house. And guess what? No one has recovered still from the subprime mortgage crisis. It's pretty fucking crazy. Again, and this was the guy who did what exactly? Whoa. Promise hope and change. That's what he did. And so far, in terms of, well, the hope and change that he's bringing, not much has really, changed at all. And has mostly just stayed the exact same.
Back in that flux capacitor, and this time, we're going way back.
Neoliberalism.
Whoa! 1944. Wait a second. Elon, what are you doing here? You see, 1944 was the birth date of a doctrine known as neoliberalism. As I've researched this video in 2008, I've come to understand that what happened in '08 was really a direct result of this doctrine's emerging preeminence, both globally and here in the USA. And if you want to understand neoliberalism, you've got to get to know these guys, Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman. Now I know what you're thinking. Those guys are really hot, but they were just known for their good looks. Let's start with old Foxy Friedrich. In 1944, Friedrich published a book that would come to be known as the ideological bedrock of neoliberalism, The Road to Serfdom. The Road to Serfdom lays out some of the central tenets of neoliberalism, which include the almighty power of the free market. In Hayek's worldview, the free market is the only effective mechanism for distributing knowledge and resources. So-called intrusions on the free market, social welfare programs like healthcare and low-cost education, are coercive limits on liberty. Individualism. Hayek saw individualism as the cornerstone of freedom. He argues that societies function best when individuals are left to pursue their own interests. He recast the citizen as the consumer and interpreted freedom as the freedom to buy or sell. Competition and greed.
Yep, this is like pretty fucking right on the fucking money here, dude. The sort of like live, let free kind of attitude that was being further and further catalyzed, and the crushing of unions, specifically in the 70s and in the 80s by Reagan and, well, a lot of the Republican administrations during the time. Whoa, crazy, was another thing that really, really helped catalyze the rise of neoliberalism. Because again, I've talked about this concept before, but the contradictions of neoliberalism are more and more being shown, I think, basically on like a fucking daily basis. You know, like with the abundance agenda, for example. It's just an attempted rebranding of the exact same fucking, well, dog shit, to be honest. Like, let's be honest here. It's just a rebranding. It's very, very funny how this video is already, well, calling out, like, the abundance agenda without really, really going into what the abundance agenda is. I mean, when did this video come out? Like, about 2 months ago? Came out about 2 months ago, and, well, the abundance stuff was just like, that's very, 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 very funny. Hayek literally argued that Nazism came about due to loss of individualism. Dude, the cult of fucking individualism will forever fucking haunt us for, I don't know, decades and perhaps more generations to fucking come. Because here's the problem with fucking individualism, alright? Human society was not built on the sort of powers and grace of fucking individualism, okay? That's fucking stupid. Why are humans successful? Because we congregated together to build society, to build community, primitive accumulation, blah, 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 stuff like that. Not because of like, oh yeah, dude, the hecking free market has given you such individual freedom to be able to buy your slop dreck item from fucking Amazon. No, that's fucking stupid. Like, it's very, very dumb. that's not the main reason why the humanity ended up being as successful as it is and is the dominant species on the planet. Because we have conquered the planet. Humanity has won. We are the top of the fucking food chain in terms of, well, planet Earth. It's because of communalism, not because of individualism. It's ridiculous.
Maintain social order. Noam Chomsky said it best. The best factors of predicting success in late-stage capitalism are a combination of greed, cynicism, obsequiousness, and subordination, lack of curiosity and independence of mind, and self-serving disregard for others. I like
Whoa, that is just a complete, perfect encapsulation. That's pure death of fucking subjectivity shit right there, dude. The fact that the individualism, the individualized, atomized fucking attitudes that everyone fucking engages with nowadays. And I think it's not just like neoliberal capitalism that has done this. I think it's also other factors like suburbanization significantly contributes to this. The fact that there are lack of third places, obviously the destruction of unions. It is much harder for people to socialize and interact and be able to form communities and social bonds with people. It is so much harder for people to do that. Like, you know, there's been like studies out there saying that like people are finding it much harder to find even like friends, and they maybe have like one best friend in their lives, or maybe like one friend or two friends in their lives. That's a problem. There is a lack of social cohesion because, again, what's fucking destroying social cohesion? Car culture, the complete like subservience to individualism, suburbanization, all of these different fucking goddamn factors. That's the main fucking issue here, right? Death of fucking subjectivity bullshit.
I like to think of neoliberalism as capitalism on steroids. It catalyzes profit-generating capital owners, leaving the rest of us with nothing but vague promises that wealth will trickle down from our buffed-up billionaires. Now, it's important to understand that Hayek's new philosophy was not initially popular. In fact, it represented a divergence from the dominant economic model of the early 20th century, Keynesian economics, which viewed government intervention, especially through fiscal policy, spending, and taxation, as necessary to stabilize the economy, boost demand, and...
Dude, people have been also saying that, like, Keynesianism has been fucking debunked. And I just asked, like, in what way? How has Keynesianism been fucking debunked? If we had fucking Keynesian economics right now, you know what would fucking happen? Whoa, crazy. Probably a huge fucking explosion of economic growth, unlike that has been seen since World War II. But, you know, I guess, like, it's Jover for Keynesianism because, again, the main people that have regained the annals of power because of people becoming more comfortable and, falling asleep to the fucking propaganda of individualism and the sort of, like, the freedom that's being catalyzed by the fucking free market or whatever, have all fallen asleep to the wheel and have let, the rights that have been so hard fought for during the fucking 30s to be, washed away by, the bourgeoisie and the rich. Because, again, keep in mind, even during the 1930s, the 1940s, when Keynesianism was at its fucking peak, the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, the rich, have never stopped fighting to try to undo all of that stuff. Meanwhile, the people, unfortunately, fell asleep at the wheel and became lulled into sweet nothings. Because, quick reminder, during that time, the Republican and the Democratic Party were essentially like a uniparty during like the 40s and the 50s, but then changes started to happen. And guess who were the main catalysts for that? The rich and the bourgeoisie.
And reduce unemployment during downturns. But that's where Milton Friedman comes in. Friedman can be thought of as Hayek's most dutiful disciple. He also sort of functioned as his PR man, with a penchant for translating some of Hayek's more complex and academic concepts into short, accessible sound bites. If you've ever heard the term invisible hand of the market, Friedman coined that. And he and others set about the task of injecting Hayek's economic ideas around deregulation, privatization, and financialization into think tanks, universities, and governments around the globe. I bet you can guess which country loved his ideas. Reagan is often thought of as sort of the intellectual godfather of American neoliberalism. And while I'm not prepared to give that guy credit as intellectual anything, it is true that his administration implemented a no-holds-barred blitz of Hayek-Friedman policy. Simultaneously, Reagan's reign coincided with a rapid rise in economic inequality, heretofore unseen in our nation's history. Check out this chart showing the relative wealth share of the top 1% versus the bottom 50%. Reagan gets elected in 1981, the wealth of 1% spikes, and...
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Again, what did Reagan do? Significantly crack down on unions. For quick reminder, who was the guy who fired the air traffic control unions? That was Reagan who fucking did that. That was him. And we all know the fucking meme, right? The good old wage productivity graph. We've seen this before. productivity soaring while hourly compensation has been going down. What happened during the fucking 70s? Well, first off, there was the oil crash that happened. But this was when, guess what? The bourgeoisie and the rich were able to help catalyze more and more sort of anti-union legislation. And we're starting to cut down in terms of the power that unions and worker representation had. And of course, Reagan makes that 10 times fucking worse. Especially with a lot of his fucking goddamn policies. Ratcheting up the fucking goddamn dial in terms of, well, just how ridiculously bad wealth inequality was starting to get. That was him. That was all fucking Reagan. And obviously, whoa, it still hasn't really gotten much better, and the gap continues to increase. Pretty crazy, isn't it? But it's all started from that motherfucker Reagan.
It spikes, and it's been rising ever since. Turns out the invisible hand of the market has a sneaky tendency to reach into the pockets of the working class. Now, it would be untrue to categorize conservatives as the only administrators of the neoliberal agenda. One of the most important victories for the neoliberal order came under Bill Clinton's administration, and it just so happens to be one of particular importance in our quest for understanding what happened in 2008. The repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. See, Glass-Steagall codified a fairly common-sense notion. Basically, the money for bread isn't supposed to be spent at the casino. In 1933, the Glass-Steagall Act was passed as a direct response to the Great Depression. It was designed to separate commercial banking from investment banking to prevent conflicts of interest. It enacted 3 basic principles. Commercial banks, where people deposit money, were not allowed to engage in risky investment activities. Investment banks...
Yeah, and guess who fucking passed that shit? Oh, whoa, crazy. It was our fucking boy, FDR, who fucking passed this shit, the Glass-Steagall Act. Because again, what was happening at the time? Oh, the fucking Depression. So, radical fucking goddamn changes needed to happen to fucking banking in order to help deal with the fucking Depression. Crazy.
Trade securities and engage in speculative investments were not allowed to take deposits from regular customers. Banks could not merge into financial giants that did both. This law kept banks from using customer savings for high-risk investments, reducing to the chance of another Great Depression. The Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, signed into law by President Bill Clinton, repealed Glass-Steagall, removing the barrier between commercial banks and investment banks. This allowed mega banks like Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank of America to form, merging traditional banking with speculative trading. It doesn't take an economics PhD to figure out why merging commercial and investment banking is a bad idea. It's kind of like hearing your little niece's dance recital is going to be held at Danny's Gentleman's Club. Like, yeah, I guess it's sort of the same activity, but those should probably be held at 2 different locations, right? I guess I got to rent it out during the day, though. But whatever. Just added to the list of things that really shouldn't be together, but all too often are. Church and state, the combination Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Matt Gaetz and 16-year-olds. The repercussions of these mega banks are still seen constantly today. At the time of recording this video, just yesterday, Bank of America, who provides financial services for 69 million U.S. consumers and small businesses, was hit by a massive data breach. This breach happened all the way back in December, and the customers of B of A didn't hear about it until yesterday.
Dude, do you know how often these fucking data breaches have been constantly happening? And I mean, you know, this is also like a sort of like broader sort of problem with capitalism in general, right? The sort of like proclivity for capitalism to sort of want to monopolize. Like Marx also said the exact same shit. Capital simply seeks one thing and one thing only, and that is maintenance of all control under itself, under, well, wealth, under the power of money, capital, wealth, you know, sort of the idea that more and more concentrations of wealth lead to, well, more control, more power being catalyzed under a fewer and fewer sort of, you know, fewer hands of people having control of all of that wealth and power. Guys, it's almost as if the problem is that if you do laissez-faire capitalism even harder, and that the invisible hand is going to be the main thing that corrects everything, it turns out it's just like, yeah, the corrections that we're doing is taking more money away from the poor. Great.
And last year, Citigroup and JP Morgan both announced breaches too, months after the fact. Your bank could be breached right now, and it might take you 9 months to hear about it. You really want to give criminals that much of a head start to get access to your personal information? I don't think so. That's why we should talk about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura keeps an eye on my personal data, including my social security number. /spin a minute to try 14 days sponsoring this video. All right, enough of this Cold War era crap. Let's hop back in the time machine and go back to 2008.
Those on Wall Street cannot resume taking risks without regard for consequences.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of
Whoa, crazy. I loved how Obama waxed poetically about fucking Wall Street and bankers, and then he fucking goddamn bails them out. Gee, I wonder why no one has any trust in the American political system anymore. Crazy.
1987.
We're down 9% today. The central banks over in Frankfurt is down by 9%. The Paris market down by 9%.
By now, the story of the '08 crisis has been artfully rendered in movies like The Big Short and Margin Call, books like The Return of Depression Economics and Panic, as well as by countless newspaper articles, podcasts, magazine write-ups, and your drunk Uncle Dave at Thanksgiving when somebody makes the mistake of bringing up Obama. Some of these sources are better than others, so here's a quick recap for those who have only heard your Uncle Dave's version. For decades, the American housing market was seen as rock solid. Prices always went up, banks made safe loans, and people paid their mortgages. It was so stable, in fact, that the mega banks had a bright idea. What if we pulled all these mortgages together and then sold them as a bond? They were called mortgage-backed securities, and what's important to understand about these securities is that they were extremely lucrative. Investors...
Oh, they made a ton of fucking money. The problem was... Not exactly stable, especially once regulators fucking found out, because they were currently asleep at the fucking wheel. Because normally, this is illegal. You shouldn't fucking do this. But legal loopholes, if we just put them together, trying to make a fuck ton of fucking money, privatizing a bunch of fucking homes and stuff like that. What could possibly go wrong? It blew into a bubble. The bubble fucking popped, especially since a lot of this was helped catalyzed by the Bush tax cuts during, I think it was 2005, I believe, was the Bush tax cuts, concentrating more and more wealth within the fucking wealthy, blowing up the fucking debt and the deficit, blah, 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 blah. We all know the fucking meme, yada, yada, yada. Republicans love to constantly give tax cuts to the rich, despite the economic fucking consequences, give more control to the rich, yada, yada, yada. They have more fucking money to play with to do stupid shit like this, and as a result, cause a huge collapse of the economy. Very cool.
Love these things. So much, in fact, that they needed to sell more. Banks realized that they can make way more money by lending to riskier borrowers with bad credit. A regular mortgage was boring. A 30-year fixed rate, responsible borrowers, a subprime mortgage? Oh, baby, now we're talking. Higher interest rates and more profits. But how do you get more subprime borrowers? It's simple.
We love making our economic system into a gambling machine. Who loves gambling? Gambling, woo!
Lower your standards. No proof of income? No problem. No down payment? No problem. Credit scores in the toilet? Here's your loan. Here's the thing about bad loans. Eventually, people stopped paying them back. Subprime borrowers started defaulting in 2006 and 2007. Foreclosures skyrocketed, flooding the market with homes.
By the way, quite literally, this is the exact same shit that happened during the Great Depression. The Great Depression was helped and catalyzed because a lot of people were, and this is one of the factors that happened with the Great Depression, a lot of people were borrowing tons of fucking money, right? The analogy is very, very similar here. Lots of people were getting credit cards out in their fucking name, and they were, racking up a ton of interest and not paying anything back. What happens when eventually you try to go back, try to get the fucking money, that you were lending out to a bunch of people, assuming, no credit history, no nothing like that? Because back during the 20s, none of that fucking shit existed. What do you mean? There was no fucking enforcement mechanisms to make sure that people were paying back their credit cards. All of this fucking debt, all the fucking interest that was constantly accumulated eventually fucking snowballed into the fucking goddamn banks crashing. And as a result, it caused the fucking world economy to crash. Thus, the Great Depression happened. Crazy.
Home prices started falling fast. Banks had billions of dollars in bad mortgage securities, and suddenly, nobody wanted to buy them. Cue the panic.
Zero. Triple B's.
Sure.
And then that happens.
What is that?
That's America's housing market.
So that's the story. And by now, you've probably heard it for the millionth time. But something else was happening around this time that's worth paying
It was a
attention
big
to.
short.
Americans were starting to lose their trust in America. Let's take a look. Yikes. Check out that drop from the turn of the century to around 08. I haven't seen a fall off that since Kanye on InfoWars. So what was happening to cause this drop? Well, for one thing, our government had utilized imaginary, non-existent weapons of mass destruction as justification for entangling us in a financially crippling and ethically dubious war halfway across the world. The ramifications of which include millions of civilian deaths, over $2.4 trillion in U.S. resources, and a power vacuum which created the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria.
I call upon all nations.
Oh, yeah. That is also another fucking problem. This fucking complete bumble fucking dumbass over here lied about going into Iraq, which is a war that ended pretty recently. When did the pullout of Iraq pretty much happen? Yeah, fucking dumb listen, George W. Bush and his fucking consequences will be written about for the decades to come. This motherfucker ruined a lot of fucking shit with America. You want to talk about, again, besides the fact that he did the tax cuts, which helped probably catalyze the subprime mortgage crisis, but also Iraq and Afghanistan was also this fucking guy. Causing, crazy amounts of fucking debt and fucking goddamn deficits in order to sort of, become much, much worse. I think Bush led to Trump. Yes and no. Yes and no. Obama was offered a potential off-ramp. Obama was offered a off-ramp. Quite literally. If he bailed out the fucking homeowners during 08, I don't think Trump would have risen. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think it was more complicated factorings. I'll be quite honest. John Roberts appointed by Bush is handling power over to Trump. Sure, but that is true. Supreme Court picks and everything, but I don't think so. Obama had an off-ramp and he didn't fucking take it. He didn't take it.
To do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
But you know what? That's a story for another day. Because another factor, one more crucial to our story, is that in 2008, Americans were scared. Millions of people who had spent most of their lives in relative financial comfort suddenly faced the prospect of losing their job or their home. Americans were fed up with the neoliberal status quo. People wanted change. People wanted Obama. And the first thing on Obama's hope and change checklist was what to do with these big fat banks. You probably heard the phrase too big to fail. And to be fair, there is some legitimacy behind that idea, largely due to the ramifications of the repeal of Glass-Steagall. Banks ballooned in size during the 90s and early 2000s. Many were so interconnected and embedded in the American economy that a full collapse could have been catastrophic for everyday Americans. So as we all know, we, the taxpayers, bailed them out. One of the first actions Obama took was to administer a program known as TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. TARP was a program that used taxpayer money to buy assets and equity from financial institutions after the collapse. Picture this. You've got this crowd of bank execs milling about, all sheepish grins and shrugged shoulders because their multi-billion-dollar bet on the housing industry has gone belly up. Now what we should have done is rounded up all these slack-jawed mouth breathers and had them fight to the death, Hunger Games style. But instead what we did is dropped a Hunger Games style $700 billion care package right into the crowd. That care package was TARP, 100% funded by American taxpayers. Now at this point you might be thinking, how did these banks do this? How did they manage to market these dog shit mortgage-backed securities like they were risk-free mutual funds? A huge part of that answer is that they had insurance. And almost all of that insurance was provided by one single company, AIG. AIGFP sold massive amounts of credit default swaps, a type of insurance policy for the mortgage-backed securities, and collateralized debt obligations that banks were selling like hotcakes. And the banks love these swaps because they let them claim that their risky investments were insured, making them feel safer. AIG raked in huge profits without setting aside enough cash.
Oh, that's actually fucking crazy, dude. So basically, an insurance company basically scammed a bunch of banks into fucking doing this, and the fucking banks fell for the scam. That's so fucking funny, dude. God.
For potential losses because they assumed that home prices would never crash, which of course they did. So now AIG needs to be bailed out too because just like the banks, these boys have become too big to fail. Enter TARP to the rescue once again. But then AIG did the unthinkable, something so egregious that it even boggled my deeply cynical mind. They took the taxpayer TARP bailout, and you know what the very first thing they fucking did with it was? Paid all of their executives bonuses. In March 2009, AIG announced that they were going to pay out hundreds of millions in executive bonuses using the recently distributed TARP money from the Obama Treasury Department. Truly evil shit. At first, the announcement was met with outrage from both sides of the aisle. Here's how Chuck Grassley, a Republican senator, responded to the announcement.
I would suggest the first thing that would make me feel a little bit better towards them is if they'd follow the Japanese example and come before the American people and take the deep bow and say, I'm sorry. And then either do one of two things, resign or go commit suicide.
The Obama administration vowed to put a stop to this. His initial statement from March of 2009. This is a corporation that finds itself in financial distress due to recklessness and greed. How do they justify this outrage? Wall Street argued that the bonuses were embedded in contracts.
Okay, listen. Okay, this is really easy. You know what you do? You put Glass-Steagall back in, and you fucking start breaking up the fucking banks. That's what you do. You go fucking full Teddy Roosevelt. But again, at this point, this is stuff that a sort of like strategy that I've broadly talked about here. The fucking do-nothing goddamn Democrats, because again, what's the Democrats' fucking goal at this point? Very often, they just want the exact same moneyed interests that the Republicans have to help bankroll their fucking campaigns. Due to the fact that, well, they just want the fucking money, like the Republicans do. That's the whole fucking problem. Why do you think that Obama, fucking primarily speaking, bailed out the fucking banks? And essentially just helped catalyze this more sort of like do-nothing, centrist, LARP bullshit. Well, the Democrats wanted that fucking billionaire company cash, right? That's what they wanted. It all comes back to who currently is helping maintain the annals of the systems of control and hierarchy that are currently plaguing the fucking system. It's the billionaires, it's the corporations, it's the rich. They are the common factor here.
Signed prior to the bailout, and that failure to honor these contracts would be illegal. Congress tried to pass a 90% tax on AIG bonuses to claw back the money, but the bill died in the Senate after intense lobbying from Wall Street. Ultimately, only a fraction of the bonuses were returned voluntarily. This was truly beyond the pale. Surely, someone in American leadership was going to step up and put a stop to this, but nobody ever did. Obama had campaigned on hope and change, but the banks and the insurance industry ended up conducting business as usual. So if we're gonna help the big boys on Wall Street, surely the rest of us on Main Street should get a little support too, right? Well, in 2008, one way to help the average American would have been to legalize a process called cram down. And no, it's not just what Chris Christie does when he sees a family-sized bag of M&Ms. Cram down is basically a legal process in bankruptcy courts where a judge can reduce the principal balance of a loan, effectively forcing the lenders to accept lower payments from borrowers. While cram down was already available for certain types of loans, like commercial real estate and car loans, it was not extended to primary residence mortgages, largely due to...
Yeah, that's the second thing. So basically, everyone had to be the ones who had to pay for the loans in the fucking house, essentially financially ruining them. Jesus Christ, dude.
Opposition from, you guessed it, banks. Chris Christie? Had the Obama administration successfully extended cram down to residential mortgages, it would have significantly improved the recovery for struggling homeowners. Not only would it have massively reduced the foreclosures, but it would have shifted the burden of the crisis from the American taxpayer, who funded government bailout programs like TARP, onto banks, forcing them to absorb some of the financial losses from their own irresponsible lending practices. But of course, it didn't happen. While the Obama administration initially supported cram down legislation, it failed in the Democratic-controlled Senate after heavy lobbying from the banks and the financial industry. So that's it. That's the story of 2008. The banks got...
Wall Street Democrats. This is the problem. Thank you, George Bush, for essentially shifting the sort of, instead of like, you know, working class position, sort of like more helping sort of working class position Democrats that used to fucking exist before. And then, well, thank you to the sort of like third way fucking position and bullshit. And like I said before, the Democrats wanted to chase the exact same fucking donors that the Republicans have. Well, you have stuff like this happening. That's how 2008 happened. And essentially, instead of bailing out the homeowners, Obama bailed out the banks. And, well, you know, the whole TARP program, the whole AIG nonsense. This is how it happens. And there we go. You have now created discontent and distrust. Like I said before, like I've been describing before, Obama, because of his, like, neoliberal fucking petulance and abstemiousness and wanting to chase the exact same executives and donors as the Republicans had, well, what happened? Catalyzed some of the greatest historic losses of the Democratic Party for, well, decades at that point. He lost over 1,000 state Senate seats all across the fucking country. This is how it happens. This is how radicalization happens further and further right. This is how it fucking happens if you just don't bail out the homeowners. Like I said before, Obama had an off-ramp. And at this point, it looked like he had 2 off-ramps. He took none of them because of the fact of who controls the annals of Congress, who currently has control of the systems of the systems and the maintenance of hierarchy that exist within the American political system. It's the rich.
Got bailed out, the executives got bonuses, and everyday Americans got bent over. Okay, time to head back to the present. Oh, no, don't stall out on me, you piece of shit, we're not home. I knew I shouldn't have bought the Tesla charger for the flux capacitor. God, where are we? Oh, no, no, please, no, not again.
It is amazing how you can delete 33,000 emails.
Welcome back to 2016, guys.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he's the winner of this race and will return to the White House.
Fight for a great future for Germany. Fight for a great future for Germany. Go, go, go.
We love the
Now, I want to be fair. In this video, I've been largely critical of the Obama administration and their response to the '08 financial crisis. But his administration did oversee some incremental but important reforms as well. The passage of Dodd-Frank instituted some common sense banking regulations, and the Affordable Care Act cut the number of uninsured Americans in half. This had the effect of reducing inequality. In 2015, the final year of Obama's presidency, low-wage workers actually rose at a rate above their high and medium wage counterparts. For the first time in decades, the invisible hand of the market had been swatted back by the pockets of the American workers, even if it was just a little slap on the wrist. But then Wall Street had an idea, something so crazy, it just might work. Perhaps if the invisible hand is losing its pickpocketing touch, it could instead
Grab by the foot.
That's right. Trump descended down his golden escalator and shifted the paradigm of American politics for good. But how did he do it? How did a reality TV star who had already run for president 2 times before as a laughingstock become the Republican frontrunner in a matter of months? Well, to understand that,
Wait, he ran for the presidency twice before? Really? Huh? What?
how did he do it? How did a reality TV star who had already run for president 2 times before as a laughingstock become the Republican frontrunner in a matter of months? Well, to understand that, I think we need to take a look back at the chart that I showed you earlier. But this time, let's focus on the period between 2008 and 2015, when Trump announced his run. Notice anything? That line is flatter than a Jeb Bush joke at a campaign rally.
Please clap.
You see, despite the modest policy successes under Obama that I listed, the American public never regained its trust in government after '08. Obama had campaigned and won on a message of disruption and change, but he had governed as part of the establishment. Americans still wanted their outsider. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Ben, Trump isn't an outsider. He's an elite. He lives on a golf course and flies on the Epstein jet. But in the context of the 2016 Republican Party, it is absolutely true that Trump was an outsider. Don't believe
This is actually a very fucking good point by Ben. Yeah, like the sort of rhetoric that Trump was engaging in 2016 in terms of like, well, let me tell you folks, it was the trade policies that these guys voted for. These guys voted for. Listen, let me tell you folks, I was the one who also helped pay these guys. I don't have to listen to any of these guys, you know, or the billionaires that give the money to the politicians in order to do all of this sort of policy that screw you over the American people. And guess what? That rhetoric right there by Trump, highly fucking effective, you know? We all know, like, the classic hits from 2016 that were very, very effective politically by Trump. We know, we've done the examinations and stuff like this before. There was a reason why he was going to very obviously win and why Hillary Clinton was going to fucking lose, because it's just like, dude, like, she doesn't have the fucking sauce. The Democrats are not going to fucking meet the moment because, again, of the strategy at this point that has been sort of solidified and codified and, like, not codified, but, well, solidified and let's also say, like, kind of codified by Clinton and the Obamas. If you just do minor reforms and don't really do much of anything, you can probably win elections because, again, like, no one's going to want to vote for the Republicans because they're just, like, they're just so silly and crazy. But hey, stuff was also changing within the Republican Party. What happened during the Obama administration, for example? The Tea Party movement. The fucking goddamn Republican Party moving along with their voter base because they were getting further and further right due to being screwed over completely by the political establishment that existed, well, broadly speaking, in the annals of Congress because of the subprime mortgage crisis. people were getting more and more radicalized because, well, so much stuff that was kind of around the corners. A lot of course, Republican propaganda also helped with this quite significantly to sort of help catalyze these further right movements within the voter base. And, well, the Tea Party helped reply in fucking kind. They significantly helped move the Overton window in terms of Republican thought and fucking discourse more and more to the right, forcing the Republicans to have to shift with them. And as a result, all of this rhetoric, the media, the propaganda swirling around, well, catalyzed and swirling around because of the Tea Party helped create the rise of a Donald Trump, because he was the one who harnessed that energy in order to be able to easily get into the fucking White House in 2016.
Believe me? Let's take a little trip down memory lane of what he and his Republican colleagues said about each other back then.
You all have friends. You all have friends that are thinking about voting for Donald Trump. Friends, do not let friends vote for con artists.
Donald, you're a sniveling coward and leave Heidi the hell alone.
First of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on the stage. He's number 11. He's got 1% in the polls, and how he got up here, there's far too many people.
Trump was absolutely a disruptor in the Republican Party. It's weird. In a lot of ways, Trump won by singing the same song as Obama. Sure, he changed the lyrics and made him a little more racist.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Okay, a lot more racist. But the melody, the feeling, that was the same. Think about it.
Under my administration, we're fighting against the lobbyists, the special interests, and the corrupt Washington politics.
Or what about?
The forgotten man and the forgotten woman. Well, you're not forgotten anymore. That I can tell you.
This sort of rhetoric tapped into the same part of the American...
Very, very good fucking rhetoric, dude, right? Talking about the corrupt elites. Also the trade, like constantly talking about trade all the fucking time and saying that, well, I'm a businessman. I totally know how trade works. I know how the economy works, folks. I think TPP is full of shit. I think these trade deals are complete crap. We all know this, folks. That tapped in to the American psyche very, very effectively. And now, like, look at this. Like, more and more fucking, like, union voters are voting fucking Republican, for fuck's sake, at this point. Like, it's ridiculous.
Psyche that Obama activated. The disaffected and the disenchanted felt like they had a voice. And when he faced off against the most entrenched establishment politician of the 21st century, the literal embodiment of politics as usual, you can almost understand how people fell for his grift.
What year was America great?
When it was founded.
Except for the slavery stuff.
Except for the slavery stuff, you know?
Ooh. Or maybe people are just dumbasses. All right, that's enough 2016 for today.
Yeah, let's be honest here. The factor of also the lumpen proletariat should also be something that's pointed out here, to be honest. And who helped catalyze the sort of like death and sort of fall of critical thinking that happened, broadly speaking, in America. That was Reagan when he decided to remove a lot of the subsidies for universities. No more fucking subsidized education. The privatization of education started because of that. And also, well, George Bush with standardized-based testing and no fucking child left behind. Essentially bringing in market forces to, well, be the main thing that's pushing education forward. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. We love the death of critical thinking and education, creating, well, a lot more lumpen proletariat for a Donald Trump to be able to take significant advantage of.
Well, we're back. We're in the year 2025. And if you're like me, this year hasn't felt like a great one to live in. Every day we wake up and read stories about how people are losing access to their healthcare, or about how we're relinquishing our commitment to helping the planet, or about how our president is planning to build a luxury resort on the rubble of a society that we helped bomb into oblivion. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to understand how we got here. It's sort of like that comic quote.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Sort of stupid, but also sort of poignant. I think it's important to understand that we didn't just wake up one day with Trump and MAGA and all of these problems. We are where we are in 2025 for a whole host of reasons. And what happened in 2008 is just one piece of the puzzle. If you're like me, most days I'm pretty pessimistic about our future. And really the only thing that I found that helps combat this doomer outlook is attempting to put together the pieces of what brought us here. I think it helps to go back and look at how 2008 led to 2025. Because it's a reminder that things weren't always like this. And that means that things don't have to be like this moving forward. If we can understand how our past shaped our present, then I think we have a chance at shaping a future that's a little bit brighter. Which is why I'll be making more videos that are focused on trying to make...
I do, like, yeah, like the coconut tree meme. Listen, people memed on the coconut tree because it sounded like kind of awkward and silly, but again, what Kamala Harris was talking about with the fucking coconut tree, not exactly wrong. Like, it's a little awkward, sounds kind of silly, but wasn't wrong, to be honest.
Make sense of how we got here. I'm considering making this into a new series on my channel. So if you enjoyed this video and want to follow me on this journey, you can let me know by liking this video.
I think we're pretty much done here. Lovely, fantastic. Great video there by Ben a Minute. Ben a Minute. I really like the pun. It's a very good pun. Very, very good. So, again, like, broadly speaking, we know what sort of helped catalyze a lot of this moment, right? Like, we can, like, point to, like, a lot more fucking specific things. Wage productivity gap, the sort of stifling of unions, of a lot of worker representation to be able to fight for themselves as a result of, well, policies from Reagan, the oil crisis from 1974 also sort of helped catalyze this significantly. You know, a lot of union power was destroyed. And as a result, a lot of workers were not able to sort of, well, advocate for themselves, and everything started to become more atomized thanks to a lot of the policies and thoughts and ideas that neoliberalism sort of helped to introduce. And we talked about this before, like, you know, suburbanization, the death of subjectivity, you know, people not being able to sort of fit and understand like another person's shoes, for example. We've talked about all these like factors that have helped build up to this moment. You know, like we can even like throw in fucking Gamergate here, right? If we're talking about the sort of like more cultural sort of like predispositions, you know, we can sort of like talk about this for like ages at this point. But I really do think like Obama was offered multiple off-ramps. He got 2 fucking off-ramps and he took none of them. And people are broadly speaking surprised that the American people started to lose faith in the systems of governance that they used to live under, or not used to, but currently fucking live under. It was obvious that a fucking Trump was going to rise as a fucking result of this, because Trump tapped into that, similar to Obama. Of course, it was a lot more racist. That's more of a sort of like result of the cultural osmosis of the time of what was happening. A Gamergate, yada yada yada, shit like this. Trump sort of like seizing on that momentum to be like, oh, well, you know, I think it's really okay for a lot more racism and people to be racist now and be more open about being racist. Very cool. Well, that's because of Gamergate. That's all Gamergate right there. But as was said before, you know, the repeal of Glass-Steagall under Bill Clinton, Dodd-Frank not being enough, the ACA not really being enough, you know, some regulation doing something about the invisible hand of the market. It wasn't enough. And that's pretty much the perfect encapsulation of, well, current neoliberals and liberals in general. A lot of the sort of like do-nothing sort of attitude that the Democrats sort of encapsulate, and why, whoa, we're currently in this sort of like neo-fascistic moment that we find ourselves in right now. A lot of it can be attributed to 2008. I don't know if it's correct to blame everything on 2008. That's like the sort of only let's be honest here. Probably the only like slight disagreement that I would have with Ben a minute, but Ben a minute also brought up Reagan, brought up a lot of stuff that Bush did, you know, the Iraq War, but I also would include you know, Patriot Act stuff. I would also include the sort of death of critical thinking and the death of education that basically Bush helped finish off and catalyze after what Reagan did by ending the subsidies that universities used to have because of Lee Atwater saying, like, you know, if we keep subsidizing fucking universities, we're going to have an educated proletariat. And if there's an educated proletariat, that's going to be some problems for us. That's not going to be good for us. Ending those fucking subsidies, no child left behind, standardized base testing, all of these fucking factors throughout the past 40 years. Also, the trade deals also being a big factor of this, right? Helping ruin the economy. Not ruin the economy, but ruin the jobs of people in rural areas in the Midwest, hollowing out those towns, those villages, or what have you, completely into the husks that they are now. These are the reasons. And yeah, you bring up a really, really good point, Alex. Yeah, Obama didn't take the off-ramps, but also the Republicans became significantly more hysterical under Obama, like the birther shit, and Trump was a king birther. Again, like, cultural osmosis also can't really be ignored by this. Same with the actions of the Tea Party. The Tea Party was a huge factor that brought the Republicans significantly more to the right. Huge, huge, huge factor. They can't be ignored. But overall, a lot of points here by Ben a minute. Fantastic points. Very, very good. But I guess mostly what I wanted to add there is a lot of additive stuff, like, you know, the Tea Party, death of subjectivity that, broadly speaking, has been more and more so catalyzed because of Gamergate. I think Gamergate is also a giant factor in sort of the neo-fascistic cultural malaise that we find ourselves in. You know, it's a huge thing there. Broadly speaking, if we are to sort of like point to factors for as to why we currently find the moment that we find ourselves in, there's a lot of complicated factors that, you know, you can go into with like multiple books, talk about them, yada 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 yada. Tons of things that you can talk about, but overall, very good points here raised by Ben a Minute. Fantastic, very good. And yeah, there is only one solution to all of this. You know, like I do like the sort of meme here saying like, you know, we are kind of currently in a moment where we're sort of like in a sort of socialism or barbarism type moment, and it's seemingly more and more so that barbarism is the thing that's being chosen here. Like, you know, I don't like how like fucking silly and like LARPy it sounds, but I kind of like sort of agree with the position that like, if nothing is fucking done about the sort of like cultural, social, political, economic malaise that we're finding ourselves in, it's only going to get worse and worse until it just really just descends down. Like, could this be like America's fucking Weimar moment? Like, maybe, but I don't know. Given the sort of like things that we've looked at and talked about before, about how the Democrats have been catalyzed as like the sort of do-nothing party, tweak around the edges to be technocratic, when people simply just don't want that anymore, and the Republicans are simply put just a party of evil and will just do evil shit to scapegoat and deflect from the fact that, well, they're just making the lives of everyone worse and helping more solidify the systems of power and control that currently operate within the annals of fucking Congress. We just have to basically deal with these consequences, and, well, things are probably going to get a lot worse before they get better, especially if the fucking Democrats decide to not get their fucking heads up out of their asses. And judging by the sort of actions that they're taking right now, I don't think they're gonna fucking do that. But all we can really do is just wait and see what happens. I'm not particularly fucking confident. I am rather pessimistic, I would say, that, you know, neoliberalism is dead. It's never gonna fucking come back, and, well, it's gonna be fucking barbarism, I think, pretty much at this point, unless something completely drastic, like New Deal 2, Electric Boogaloo, and, like, cultural fucking reconstruction of America, or, like, not reconstruction, but cultural revolution of America at this point has to fucking happen, if you even want to think about fixing any of this stuff. But hey, is anyone going to be in the annals of power in order to help catalyze these particular, like, radical fucking movements to a sort of more equitable, better position? Honestly, I want to remain optimistic, but personally, I don't think it'll really happen. But I don't know. I don't really have much else to say besides that, unfortunately.